So welcome everybody to Two Ball, Two Bold. Sports takes you could take to the bank. I'm Marshon Parker.
And I'm Nathan Tomlin, and we're just two bald bankers. We're family men who love talking about sports and just want you guys to take this journey along with us.
Yes, we are excited. This is our first episode, and the way we look at it, we spend time talking about sports. Sometimes at work, and the way we look at it, you guys are going to be a fly on the wall, and you're kind of going to get to see just kind of the things we talk about, some of the topics we discuss, and argue amongst yourself in your car or wherever you're at. And tell us what you agree with, what you don't agree with, engage in conversation, and hopefully we all have a good time. What we're going to talk about today is, I seen a topic recently. It was actually talking about college, where they were talking about the best quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end from every program in their history. And they were kind of comparing the programs to each other and the best of the best. And I said, you know what, that would be a really good NFL topic to have, right? And no better person to have that topic with than Nathan. So what we're going to do here is we're going to break it all down. And today we're going to be talking about the AFC. And just again, so you know the rules, so everybody's on the same page. Every team throughout their history, this is not just 80s, 90s, 2000s, this is the history of the franchise. We are going to go best quarterback, best running back, two best receivers, best tight end. AFC today. Next time we'll do NFC, and we're eventually going to break it down between divisions, all the way down to creating their own little Super Bowl and see who is, I guess, the best team of all time that we put together, right? And in the midst of this, we're going to engage in conversation. There's going to be some things we agree on, some things we don't agree on. And the best part is, I think we really get to learn kind of what each other sees as important in football players, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to clarify, players can be picked twice.
Yes.
But it's their body of work with that organization that we're looking at. So you may hear some names twice. It may come up. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But with that, we're going to start with the AFC West.
We're going to start with your favorite team.
And since I'm a Denver Bronco fan, been a rough few years. But we're going to start with the Broncos first. And so I'll give my five.
I'm looking forward to this. I'm saying.
I'll give my five. So I think you're going to agree probably with most of them. Maybe one position we disagree with. But quarterback, all the way Elway. Running back, TD. Tight end, Shannon Sharp. So I'll get those three out of the way. I think those are the three obvious ones.
Get that out of the way. Yes,
for anybody that is like, oh, Peyton Manning, look, it's the body of work as a Bronco. To me, it's no question John Elway.
Yes. 5
Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl wins.
Elway's a
whole career
quarterback anyway.
Whole career as a Bronco. So now the receivers is where there may be some discrepancy. So I'm going to go with 2.
Okay.
Obviously, I got Rod Smith number 1. He's
okay.
All-time wide receiver for the Broncos. Huge underdog story for him. Ring of Honor inductee, which for the Broncos. And just, he was the number 1 target for Elway in the latter part of his career, and then the few quarterbacks that were on the carousel after. And then my second one, this was where it was difficult. I looked, I was fighting between some stuff, some different guys, but at the end of the day, I had to go with DT, Demaryius Thomas.
Okay.
And so I went Demaryius Thomas, body of work, including in the postseason, up until James White in that epic comeback against the Falcons. Demaryius Thomas had the record for receptions in a Super Bowl game.
Yes.
In the Super Bowl we will never talk about again.
Didn't happen.
But he was the only Bronco that seemed to show up that day.
Yeah.
But his overall body of work, the Pro Bowls, the All-Pros, touchdowns as well. I picked him as my second wide receiver. So you got, who do you have that's different than from my five? I think you absolutely got the 3, but wide receivers, I'm assuming you may have someone different.
Just one.
Okay.
So we both agree on Rod Smith.
Okay.
And I do think it's interesting. I bet you if you ask the majority of younger football fans, they have no idea who Rod Smith was. Mainly because he came from a time where wide receivers were known not just for their numbers, but their flashiness. And Rod Smith was like
not at
lunch
all.
pail guy, right? So, no, I got to be honest. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah.
Brandon Marshall.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Marshall didn't have not he didn't have much playoffs. He didn't have any playoffs. You know he's never played a playoff game.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Never played a playoff game.
Crazy.
But
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I know, right? But when you look at his numbers and you look at the talent,
yeah,
he big wide receiver, physical wide receiver. It's still amazing he's never played a playoff game. But when you look at his numbers, I was split between him and Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah,
I was.
Yeah.
But I for me, I gave Marshall this. Now I'll say this too though. I think also I want to make sure we're on the same page with this. Yes, we're looking at the best players, but for me, I was kind of looking at the best overall fit as well.
Okay.
So I felt like I still would have chose Brandon Marshall anyways.
Okay.
But they felt like a better tandem to me too.
Got you.
Yeah.
So I went with DT over Marshall. Marshall was on my final cut list.
Yeah.
Because of the longevity as a Bronco. So Marshall was there, with Jay Cutler and
5 years?
4 or 5 years. Yeah. Demaryius played most of his career.
Yeah.
As Bronco, he had the epic touchdown against the Steelers in the postseason from Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, I rock
which it literally took Peyton Manning being a free agent and being Peyton Manning for the Broncos to get away from Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, who knows what would have happened? But Demaryius had a longer Bronco career.
Yeah.
That's why with him, Brandon Marshall's years on the Broncos were very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you said a better combination with Rod Smith because I would actually make the counter argument that Demaryius Thomas actually is a better complement to Rod Smith than Brandon Marshall because Demaryius Thomas is a better deep threat than Brandon Marshall. And Marshall was more of a possession receiver, big-bodied possession receiver. Rod Smith was a route runner.
Yeah.
Shannon Sharp was a big play. He could, but Demaryius Thomas was a big play guy.
Yeah.
The short wide receiver screens because he was extremely fast. He had track speed, but also the deep throw. Shannon Sharp was, over the middle. He had some big time deep passes as well because of his speed, especially at that time.
Could you imagine
speed at the tight end? Oh, he'd be perfect in today's NFL. But I mean, he was such a mismatch then.
Yes.
Even more so. But yeah, how they use tight ends now, Shannon Sharp's numbers would be astronomical in my opinion. But I think DT actually fits better with Rod Smith and Shannon Sharp than Brandon Marshall because of that. Because you get that added deep threat, that guy that can run the wide receiver screen. Where Brandon Marshall and Rod Smith, to me, are very similar type receivers.
I look at Rod Smith. You know what? You have a good point there, but it's like I guess I just always look at Rod Smith. He wasn't fast,
right?
But he could extend the defense.
Yeah.
Which is, I know that kind of sounds weird saying.
Yeah. Well, it's deceptive, right? You think that there were a lot of double moves.
A lot of double moves.
Demaryius Thomas would just book it right by you.
Yeah.
So
he ran a 4.34, I believe.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so let me go with the Chiefs now.
Okay. Well, so who are we taking?
Okay.
On that as
I tell you what.
I
tell you what. Because DT was, as we were going over this, DT was somebody that I was going back and forth over. I'm going to side with you because he was somebody that I was going over and over with, saying like, man, I don't know, man, he was really good, and I'm glad that I rock with Tebow. I love Tebow as a man.
Yeah.
And that probably it doesn't cloud how I see him as a football player because I realize he wasn't the best quarterback, but I'm very glad that DT ended up getting Peyton Manning. And being able to shine the way he did.
Yeah.
R.I.P. By the way. To him. But we'll go with DT because he was very close to being picked by me.
Okay.
So move forward. So now I did tell you before we started that I thought that there was something that we may not agree on.
Yeah.
But now for me, for the Chiefs.
Okay.
If we don't agree on the Mahomes thing, this is our first and last podcast.
Yeah, there's no. He's actually in the first game, next year, he is going to pass Lynn Dawson. As the all-time leader in passing yards for the Chiefs, despite playing. It's something ridiculous, 100 less games or something like that.
Of course, the 60s is 60s, so you know.
Yeah.
So Mahomes. Duh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, running back. So, I had to do some thinking on this. I settled on Priest Holmes, but I gave a lot of thought to Larry Johnson, and then I gave a lot of thought to 80s babies who play Tecmo Bowl. You'll understand me on this. I gave some thought to Christian McCoy.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you look at Priest Holmes,
that hit by Steve Atwater though.
Yeah.
Best YouTube clip.
If you look at Priest Holmes' 3-4 year run on the Chiefs, it's historic. So I had to pick him.
Okay.
Wide receiver, Tyreek Hill. Now, a lot of people don't know about him. Other wide receiver, Stephen Page.
Okay.
Played in the 80s, was a deep threat, will regularly average around 20 yards a carry. 20 yards a catch. And then the tight end, Tony Gonzalez. Now, I know some people may say, what about Travis Kelce? But I can't help but thinking about this. Travis Kelce is amazing. Travis Kelce is a first ballot Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Hall of
absolutely.
Famer. He is not the greatest tight end. And I know people are saying he's the greatest tight end. Yeah. He's not even the greatest tight end of his generation. That'll come up later in our conversation. But I look at it this. I can only imagine Tony Gonzalez with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So that's yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you. The other running back I went with Holmes too.
Okay, I think I know who you're going to say.
I did. Was Jamal Charles.
Jamal Charles.
Because
yeah.
Jamal Charles per touch was unbelievable. Injury.
Yes.
He's actually their all-time leading rusher.
Yeah,
but Priest Holmes' combination of the touchdowns on top of that was just, I mean, it was epic. You look at that. I mean, Trent Green was their quarterback, and that team was putting up almost 30 points a game.
Numbers.
That tells you something. I went with Tony Gonzalez as well.
Okay.
I did.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think a big reason for that is you look at him compared to his contemporaries.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce still, to me, I mean, he's a top 10 all-time tight end.
Yeah.
He might even be top 5 when all said and done. We have a little more discussion on that, but I mean, and he comes up big in the postseason.
Yes.
You know, nothing against Travis Kelce, but Tony Gonzalez, again, it was in an era where tight ends were not used the way they are now. He's like third all-time in the NFL in catch receptions, I think, right? And he's a tight end, and he's third all-time receptions.
What he is the perfect example of why I can't stand ring culture.
Yeah.
He didn't get a ring.
But NFL's a little bit different, except at the quarterback position to me for rings.
Well, what it is this. Yes and no. So that, I do agree with that. But what it is the whole hot take conversation, which is turned into this person doesn't have a ring, so we don't care about their career.
Yeah.
It's leaked into everything where you have a guy who is a better player, and you have a guy who, let's say one guy is an A+ player and the other guy's an A- player. That A- player has 2-3 rings, and his career then trumps the A+ player. That's what I don't like.
Yeah,
you know.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I went with Tyreek Hill, obviously. I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
Come on. And my second wide receiver, man, I had to look, man.
Okay.
I had to look, because I was kind of shocked at the lack of wide receivers at Kansas City for long periods of time. So I ended up going with, I mean, I was between 3 or 4 different guys. I ended up going with Otis Taylor.
Okay. He was on my short too.
He was on a little bit longer with the team. More receptions, less yards per catch.
Yeah.
But that was really the only one that we get different. But I mean, I'm fine going.
I also one other option potentially for me also was Dwayne Bowe.
Yeah, Dwayne Bowe, and why I was really considering Dwayne Bowe was it was really in that time where Kansas City's offense was really blah.
Yeah.
Right, they had that run of how many games in a row without a wide receiver scoring a touchdown, and then also the compliment that he would make to Tyreek Hill as well, being more of a a possession
bigger
type of receiver, big bodied. But when you have Tony Gonzalez at the tight end, to me that's you actually, and Priest Holmes was kind of a little bit ahead of his time too in terms of catching passes out of the backfield.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
All right, Chargers now. You go.
So San Diego / LA. So quarterback, it was interesting because I was between 2 guys, right? I was between Rivers and Fouts.
Me too.
Right. I ended up going with Rivers, and the reason why is what it boiled down to is I looked and postseason. Rivers got to the playoffs more,
Yes.
won more games in the postseason.
Yes.
The stats are deceptive because the era has changed. Dan Fouts at that time was putting up numbers people weren't doing,
Video game
But I'm going to take Rivers because, especially at the quarterback position, leading your team to victories, a lot of that does fall on the quarterback.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I did give it to Rivers. Running back, I mean, come on. LT, I mean, come on. That's a no-brainer. Tight end was also kind of difficult. I did go with Gates over Kellen Winslow. But really, Gates was just a touchdown machine, man. But look, Kellen Winslow is incredible. I mean, it's crazy that you have probably 4 of the top 10 tight ends. We've already talked about 5 of probably the top 10 tight ends in the NFL history.
AFC West.
On 3 teams. On 3 teams. So, but I did go with Gates. Mm-hmm. Receivers, went with Allworth, and Keenan Allen.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And Keenan Allen really, I mean, dude, the longevity. You know, he's got like 11,000 receiving yards.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I looked at his numbers and I was like, and he even missed about a year and a half total with injuries. He's just been there forever. Mm-hmm. And the consistency he puts up, man. He's, and we're gonna see. I don't know if the Chargers are gonna end up cutting him this year for cap casualty with the money situation they got going on.
I hope not.
I think they may try to restructure him a little bit. Yeah. But yeah. So that was my 5 with the Chargers.
So, just like you, mm-hmm. I was Fouts and Rivers.
Yeah. Those are only 2 options, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We go to Stan Humphries, and we can't do.
Went to a Super Bowl.
Drew Brees wasn't Drew Brees yet, right?
They only played a couple years anyway.
I went back and forth a little bit, but listen. Any man who has that many kids and can still ball and can play with a tore ACL.
Oh, that was nuts, man.
I had to pick Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
Man of my own heart, that many kids. No, but honestly, I look at Phillip Rivers and pin it really quick to Phillip Rivers thing. Okay, tight end, I went Winslow. So this is my reason behind going with Winslow is because the way I look at it is this: Gates is amazing. I'm not really surprised he didn't get inducted into the Hall of Fame first ballot, But the reason I went with Winslow,
he's like 5th all time receiving touchdowns.
He's a
not
maniac.
Yeah.
But the thing is this: I couldn't choose as good as Gates was. I couldn't choose him over the prototype. Winslow's a prototype, man. Like all these tight ends we're talking about, they're not them unless he's him.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to go with him. But Rivers is the 2nd best quarterback in that draft, behind Ben Roethlisberger. And if Eli Manning ends up being a Hall of Famer, we talked about this and I told you it will come up in our conversation. And I know this is off topic. If Eli Manning goes to I do not care about the Super Bowls. If he ends up in the Hall of Fame, Phillip Rivers better be in the Hall of Fame because he was a better quarterback.
I agree.
So that's my little take on that.
I'm with you on that.
Okay.
And who are your receivers?
Same. Lance Allworth was also a prototype.
Yeah.
He was one of the first deep threat receivers.
Oh, yeah.
The very first we'll end up talking about, I'm sure, when we do the NFC
I mean, the Chargers, I didn't even have to look at anything.
Yeah.
I just had to look really for me, it was between, the tight end and quarterback, I was in between 2.
Yeah.
And I had to look and compare. And I'm okay going with Winslow to the point that you said, over Gates.
Yeah.
I like I said, I just chose Gates because I looked at that and I said, he's like 5th all time in receiving touchdowns. That's nuts.
He probably ran like a 4.8.
That's nuts. The dude was, and he didn't even play football in college.
No.
But I'm totally fine going with Winslow there because I was in between them, and you make a very good point about him being the prototype and really setting what the expectation was for a tight end.
He's the prototype.
So we're going to Las Vegas. So give me your.
Okay. So
Oakland /LA/Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders, starting 5.
So, this is where
this one to me. The quarterback and the tight end were, running back and receivers to me was easy.
I thought so too.
To me, it was the quarterback and the tight end. So let's see what you got.
So I'll tell you before I say this. What was interesting to me about this one was, this was where I talked about like, hey, this is where we're going to see how deep your NFL knowledge bag is, right? The Raiders, there's no players here who's played in the last 10 years, right? So Ken Stabler at quarterback.
Okay.
Now I had out of Ken Stabler and Jim Plunkett.
Mm-hmm.
I gave Stabler the nod.
I did too.
Okay, good.
I did too. Yeah.
So running back.
Mm.
Now look, all you '80s babies who are watching this, don't crucify me, okay? I went with Marcus Allen. I know a lot of people are going to say Bo Jackson. Look, I've got the Bo Jackson, shoulder pad bat card right here. I got Super Tecmo Bowl here. I'm a fan, right? You can't be an '80s baby without being a fan of Bo Jackson. But we gotta stop talking about Bo Jackson like he ran for 2,000 yards. Bo Jackson never even ran for 1,000 yards. Now, granted, he was a part-time player, but so I gotta put that out there because I know somebody's gonna watch this and say, "How do you not choose Bo Jackson?" Marcus Allen was a maniac. Marcus Allen was like O.J. Simpson 2.0, right? Tim Brown, I think we both got that. Fred Biletnikoff, I hope we both have that. Okay, tight end, Dave Casper.
Yeah, I was between Casper and Powell, and I went with Casper.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went with the same 5 you did.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. To me, Bo Jackson wasn't even in the argument. I wrote down Allen, Brown, and Biletnikoff without even looking.
So who was your number 2 running back?
I didn't even look. Bro.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't even know who to. I wouldn't even know where to. I wouldn't. Marcus Allen, man, that was it. For me, you know? I would have had to look. I did look just to make sure there wasn't, wasn't a guy that played on those teams in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
That maybe was like, oh man, he was actually better than, I obviously don't remember from watching, remember from hearing about. But interesting side note on that, did you know Josh Jacobs was 4th all time in the Raiders rushing yards? Like, that's nuts. How good of it. Like, this franchise has been around for a long time.
Yes.
And they've had a struggle bus for 20 years, but prior to that, they were a very good organization.
Oh, yeah.
So, he's only been on the team for 4 years, 5 years.
Well, remember that 1 year he had?
That's
nuts.
That's true. That's true.
So, things like when you have a 1,700-yard season, whatever he has, that kind of inflates it.
Yeah,
and
but to me, Marcus Allen was a no-brainer. And Brown and Biletnikoff is old school.
Oh, yeah.
And Tim Brown, come on. Tim Brown's... almost 12,000 yards, I think, or something that.
Oh yeah, and Tim Brown, I turned on Tim Brown. I used to really look at him as like super overrated, but when you look, he never, like, the best quarterback he had was Rich Gannon.
Yeah,
and that was at the tail end of Rich Gannon's career. Like Tim
Brown's career.
Well,
both kind of.
Both. Yeah. Because remember, Rich Gannon didn't even become a starter until I think his 30s.
Yeah.
But.
And he didn't have a great arm.
He didn't, but he was. He played.
He was accurate.
Yeah. He played the position well.
Yeah.
They
went to a Super Bowl.
But yeah, and then they got blasted. But Tim Brown was great route runner. He was fast. He was faster before he tore his knee up early in his career. Have you ever seen highlights of Tim Brown at Notre Dame? He was insane.
Oh, yeah.
He was insane.
Punt returner.
Played a little bit of running back, too. Everything.
Yeah.
And then Biletnikoff, obviously it's college, but he's got the wide receiver award is named after him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Biletnikoff was the man,
It was no brainer.
Now, this might have been the easiest one, the Texans. I want you to go.
Yeah. So
we're in the AFC. We're in the AFC South now.
Yeah. So the Texans, I'm going to do my quarterback last because that's the one where
I thought that was pretty easy.
I think it was easy too, but I just want to see what you go. Running back Arian Foster.
Yeah.
Wide receivers Andre Johnson and D-Hop.
Easy.
And tight end Owen Daniels.
Yeah.
And quarterback I went with Deshaun over Matt Schaub. And again, the reason I did that is he had a shorter body of work, but the years that were there, he was there. Now, I'm not condoning him as a man.
Hey.
This is all football.
He's nasty, but whatever.
The years that he was there, man, that man was special. I don't know I can probably guess what happened to him. It's up here. But look at those 4 years he played and tell me that man was not 10 times better than Matt Schaub. Matt Schaub was there longer, has the career numbers there. Deshaun Watson, in less game, he was better with less. He had Hopkins versus Andre Johnson.
I was about to say, did he have less talent?
He didn't have the running backs. They didn't have the running game that Schaub did.
I agree with that.
They also didn't have the coach. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Gary Kubiak is a better coach than Bill O'Brien.
I agree.
Gary Kubiak won a Super Bowl for crying out loud.
I agree.
As an offensive coordinator and as a head coach.
You know all about that. Yeah.
So I went with Deshaun Watson, but that was the one that was the one where there was a question.
Yeah.
You know, and I did look because I was like, Matt Schaub was there for a while, so I had to look, and to me, their stats are not far enough apart for the amount of games more that Matt Schaub played for me to take Matt Schaub over Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson had as many or more Pro Bowls than Matt Schaub in way less time. Won a playoff game.
Yeah.
Where Matt Schaub did not.
Yeah.
So I went with Deshaun Watson.
So this is the thing, and I tell you what's ironic though. It's funny.
I'm assuming you had the other same four.
I didn't even consider Deshaun.
Really?
It was like I just said, oh, Matt Schaub.
Yeah.
And I do think it's because I mean, you know,
he was there for a while.
He was there for a good amount of time, and those teams consistently did they win the playoffs? No, but they consistently won. Like they consistently won double-digit games a year.
Well, I mean, they did have obviously in the beginning part of Matt Schaub's career, right? Peyton Manning was there in Indianapolis,
correct.
And then after that 1 year where Peyton was hurt, they won the division that year and lost in the playoffs, and then Andrew Luck was there.
Yeah.
So I mean, he was in a division where he had to play. Peyton was top 2, top 3 quarterback every single year.
Titans were pretty good around that time.
And I'm sorry,
pretty good around that time.
Titans were okay.
Yeah.
And then
one of those years, Titans won 12 games.
And then Andrew Luck was, I think, a top 5 quarterback when he was in the league, top 5 or 10. I mean, he's definitely better than Matt Schaub.
Yeah.
But I mean, Andrew Luck. I mean, the Colts were the ones running that division, so he was in a tougher division at that point than when Watson came in. Although the Titans, to your point, they were pretty solid these last couple of years with Watson. But that's where I went. So I mean, I see the argument for Schaub. Schaub's longevity is there. I just think Watson was way more dynamic. And I think just watching them, he played enough. He played, I think, 4 years in Houston versus, I think Schaub played 7 years in Houston.
Yeah.
And in those 4 years versus the 7, I think those 4 years were that much better than the 7 that Schaub had.
So this is the question. So this is how we decide, because it's funny. Like I said, I just immediately was like, oh, Matt Schaub. Now I'm questioning myself, and I'm thinking, okay, have I just kind of erased Deshaun Watson out of my head? And because I didn't even think about it. I really didn't even think about it. And I try not to get. I believe we've had this conversation before. I really try hard to separate my entertainers from what they do outside of entertainment.
We're talking just football.
Athletes, actors, all that other stuff. Who they are. God, we don't know any of these people.
Yeah.
So the ones that we think are great people could actually go home and beat their wives. We just don't know. So but I think talent-wise, I would say Deshaun Watson was a better quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go with that. Just because I guess I just kind of erased it on my head.
And if you really take the total yards, you add Deshaun Watson's rushing yards in there.
It was more dynamic.
I mean, the amount of total yards that they're responsible for was actually, it wasn't that far apart when you add that to it, and that's an added dimension, obviously for quarterbacks, and we see that more now in the more current quarterbacks versus the older quarterbacks,
and the scheme that they ran at that time, because with Gary Kubiak, Kyle Shanahan, my guy, Niner fans, go Niners, the way they ran the ball. Yes, Arian Foster was an excellent running back, but just their scheme, because again they had that Denver scheme, so that would have helped Schaub a lot. And I have to admit, I think this would be the one time in this whole conversation where I just say, like, I didn't even think about the guy. I just didn't.
Yeah.
But I do think.
Yeah. Well, they have such a short history.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of quarterbacks that started 1 year, but there's only been 2 quarterbacks that really started for years for them. It was Schaub and Watson. Everyone else was maybe a year or 2. You know, even David Carr was a couple of years.
Yeah, he was until he got his face beat in though.
Yeah.
I'm cool with going with Watson because
Okay.
he is more dynamic.
And then
Well, was
for Jacksonville, who you got?
All right, so
This one to me was real easy too.
it was
This-
too.
this
Now
one was
listen, if we're doing this in 4 years, you know, T Law will be there. I'm a big Trevor Lawrence fan. I think he.
I agree.
Whatever, but
I agree.
But
I agree.
But we're not doing this 4 years
We're
from
not.
now. We're doing this
We're
in
doing it
2024.
That's right.
So I've got Mark Brunell.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
No question.
Receivers, and I think one thing that we've already seen, and I think a theme that we're going to see throughout this, is we're going to see a lot of tandems where the guys play together, right?
Well, with these teams, Jacksonville's only been around for not even
That's
30
true.
years.
Well, that's true.
So a team like this, you are limited.
But even with the Broncos,
Yeah.
4 of those guys played together.
Yeah.
You know, so wide receivers Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardell.
100%.
That's not even tight end. Mercedes Lewis.
Only
Okay.
option.
I seen him play in high school. So
That man is huge.
He went to Long
He's still
Beach
playing.
College. Is he still playing?
Yeah.
So
I don't remember what team he was on this last year, but he's basically just a run blocker because he was always great.
Yeah, he's about as big as a tackle. He played at Long Beach Poly.
Yeah.
And he was a man already. Yeah. But now the running back, okay, the Bay Area.
There's only 2 guys.
I know. In the Bay Area in me, you know, shout out Bay Area, is really wanting to say MJD.
Mm-hmm.
Go De La Salle. Well, what am I talking about? Go De La Salle. I went to Pitt, not Go De La Salle, but still. But, jeez, I tell you, a part of me also wants to really say Fred Taylor. I tell you what, I'm going to go with Maurice Jones-Drew just because of this. They're both extremely talented. Matter of fact, I can argue Fred Taylor was probably more talented with the speed and the size combination. But I'm going to go with Maurice Jones-Drew because he was able to consistently stay healthy more than Fred Taylor. Okay. And I don't say that with 100% certainty.
Yeah, because you're not. Because I went with Fred Taylor.
Okay.
And if you look at their stats.
Yeah.
Fred Taylor played longer.
Yes, he did.
Played more games, more carries, more yards, more touchdowns. Almost as many receptions. It seemed that way.
Yeah.
But he was never dinged up for long periods of time.
Yeah.
He missed games. He never, I don't know if he ever, I shouldn't say ever, but he wasn't consistently playing 16 games. But I went with Fred Taylor.
I'm going to be honest with you.
But, I mean, MJD, I think, MJD's peak, he had a couple years there where and I think part of it is, too, the more recent players, we get a little bit skewed, especially with running backs, because of fantasy football. To be honest, because the game has changed a little bit. But if you actually look, Maurice Jones-Drew didn't have that many more receptions or receiving yards than Fred Taylor.
He did lead the league in rushing.
Yes.
But
once.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But for 2 or 3 years, MJD was one of the top 2 or 3 fantasy football draft picks.
Yes,
Fred Taylor was fantasy football wasn't. I mean, it was around, but it wasn't to what we know of it today.
Yeah.
But I went with Fred Taylor.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I went with MJD because he's from the Bay.
Yeah, that's fine. So we'll go with Fred Taylor.
Because
you're using a personal bias to pick somebody.
Maurice Jones-Drew was from the next town over.
Bro, I'm not taking anything away. And I think he's a great analyst too.
Because
I like MJD.
When you look on my list, it said Taylor / MJD. Yeah. And I want to go with the Bay Area game.
You know what's crazy? MJD and Mercedes Lewis played college together.
They played college together.
That UCLA team was really good.
And they played in, at the time, what might have been the biggest high school game ever at that time, which was, I think it was 2002, 2001. It was De La Salle. De La Salle versus Long Beach Poly.
I think it was later than that. Had to be later than that, man.
Let me think.
So I think they were drafted in like 06. So I guess that could be right.
The high school game.
It may not have been seniors.
It was 02.
Okay.
Because you figure they were probably both at UCLA for 3 years.
3-4 years, yeah, something like that.
So, but we can go with Fred Taylor because I admit Fred Taylor is more.
I think Fred Taylor. I think he had a better career.
He was a monster at University of Florida.
Next team's Indianapolis, and to me this one was really easy too. Peyton, is the quarterback. Edgerrin James is the running back. Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne as your wide receivers, and John Mackey as the tight end. And
Okay.
I was between Mackey and Clark.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I went with Mackey is kind of your reasoning for taking Winslow over Gates is he was an elite tight end before there were elite tight ends.
Yes.
Dallas Clark was never an elite tight end.
Correct.
He was very good, and I think he definitely benefited a lot from playing in that offense.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say he was a good player, but the Iowa tight ends, man, they shuttle tight ends like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But I had to go with John Mackey. So that was my 5. And I'm fairly confident you definitely have Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would think Edgerrin James.
Yes. So
Okay.
now, I'll, for the sake of the conversation, and we'll get more into this as we discuss NFC, but to me, I think Eric Dickerson, I don't understand why Eric Dickerson isn't talked about more as one of the best, is the best running back of all
He didn't
time.
play long enough in Indianapolis.
Which is why I didn't pick him.
Yeah.
Which is why I didn't pick him for the Colts.
Yeah.
But I thought about it. But
I think he only played 3 years on Indianapolis.
in
and Edgerrin James
his
played his whole
historic
career.
years. Well,
Well, his prime years.
prime
Let me
years.
put it that way. He
Bingo.
played like 8 or 9 years there. He had over 10,000 yards as a Colt.
yes.
Yeah.
And was a great receiver. So
Right.
I picked Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James, Marvin Harrison. Now, I had between 2 guys at receiver.
Mhm.
Reggie Wayne and another guy. Well, ultimately had to go with the other guy because I had to respect the history of the game.
Okay.
So I went with Raymond Berry.
Okay.
So I went with Raymond Berry. And then, of course, tight end, I had to go John Mackey. I did think about Dallas Clark because
Yeah.
Dallas Clark was a baller.
Yeah, and he was 60 catches,
Oh, yeah.
700 yards, 8 touchdowns for 10 years.
He was a
It
walking
seemed
first
like.
down. He was
Yeah.
a walking first
I
down.
mean, he
Yeah.
was Peyton's security blanket.
Yes. Which would say something when you're on a team with Edgerrin James, Marvin Harrison.
You have a
and
Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall
Yes.
of Fame running back, Hall of Fame wide receiver, Hall of Fame finalist wide receiver.
Yes.
And then you're the tight end, and you still are putting up numbers.
Although
like
I will
that.
say I don't think Rich Wayne should win Hall of Fame, but
I don't. That's a conversation for another
I
day
agree, I
because
agree.
his statistically it's very similar to other contemporaries.
yeah.
And we'll definitely go
talk
into
about
that.
that
So if
one
you
day.
take one, you got to take the other, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When they're contemporaries and their numbers are so similar,
It's going to be very hard to grade receivers for Hall of Fame.
it is, and that's why to me, that's what I'm saying about this is it's a contemporary, and that's why I'll go with Raymond Berry.
Yeah.
I'll do it because Reggie Wayne,
The OG, right?
Marvin Harrison was a top 3-4 wide receiver.
Yes.
Year in, year out.
Yes.
Right? Reggie Wayne wasn't. I think he made maybe 6 Pro Bowls, which is not bad. He had a great career.
Yeah.
But he was always the number 2 to Marvin Harrison. Then once he was the number 1, it was kind of towards the end of Peyton's tenure in Indianapolis. And then T.Y. Hilton came along with Andrew Luck and whatnot. Yeah. But I'll go with Raymond Berry on that one. I'm okay changing that one.
We got to have some OGs in there.
Yeah. No, well, we got John Mackey, Mike.
I know.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's tough because, that offense for Indianapolis is one of the, for a team that had a team together for as long as they did, that might be the best offense in terms of that was that team for 7-8 years. That core was together.
Yes.
I mean, there hasn't been a team with that for that long that I can think of off the top of my head. These other teams, these other guys are like, oh, they play together. Elway's end of his career was with Terrell Davis. He played 3 years with Terrell Davis. He played, I think, 5 years with Smith. He did play about 8 years with Shannon Sharp. But, he was already in the league 8 years by the time Shannon Sharp got there.
Yes.
So these other guys, they didn't necessarily play their whole careers together as a whole unit like they did. But
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, we're talking about OGs, right? Raymond Berry and John Mackey.
Yeah.
Not that you were ever going to choose him, but
Talking about Johnny?
did you think about it?
Johnny Unitas over Peyton?
Like, did the thought of Johnny Unitas even come up in your head?
No, because of Peyton,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't think he's better than Peyton.
Yeah.
To me, Peyton Manning is arguably, and to me, he is the greatest regular season quarterback ever. I think in game 1 through 16, week 1 through 17, you don't want anybody else. Now, playoffs, another story, obviously.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Joe Montana, to name a couple, right? These guys that have all the championships, there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
But week 1 to 17, man, you didn't want to face Peyton.
No.
You didn't want to face him.
I love hearing defensive players talk about him.
Yeah, it's like hearing offensive players talk about Ray Lewis.
Yes,
it's very similar.
Or coaches talk about Ed Reed.
Yeah.
Coaches like,
which is funny because you listen to Ed Reed talk and you'd be like, that guy?
Bill Belichick
Well,
has the biggest man crush ever on Ed Reed.
Oh, he would have loved to have Ed Reed. If he had
yeah.
Ed Reed as a safety, it would have been disgusting. Okay, so then Tennessee, who you got? Tennessee / Houston.
That's important to remember.
Oilers /
So
this one was tough for me.
So I think I know the position that was tough for you.
Honestly,
yes.
Well, I had to look up wide receivers.
Okay.
And tight ends.
So this
running backs, I was between 2 guys.
Okay.
2?
Probably
3 guys, actually. 3 guys.
Yeah.
And quarterback, I was pretty solid. I was between 2, but I kind of knew where I was leaning, and I just looked up the numbers and kind of confirmed.
This might be where our age difference kicks in.
I don't know. We'll see.
Now,
I don't think so.
why.
I think you think that, but I think
I didn't have to look up the receivers.
Got you. There you go.
Okay, for me, quarterback to me is a no-brainer. Warren Moon. Running back, I think is also a no-brainer. Earl Campbell. Wide receivers, Ernest Givens and Haywood Jeffries. Tight end
was very difficult. And
so
I went with a guy that was there for a long time, and that's why I picked him.
So I went with a guy who was there.
Miracle.
Bingo. And I'm gonna tell you what's funny is the Music City Miracle and the fact that he's been there a long time was the thing, because I don't think he was the. So
Delaney Walker, I think, was a better tight end, but Frank Wycheck was there so long.
And that's what I was going over. But I ultimately said Frank Wycheck. Okay. So I want to Warren Moon quarterback, running back Earl Campbell, wide receiver Ernest Givens, Haywood Jeffries, and tight end Frank Wycheck.
So I went quarterback Warren Moon.
Okay.
Running back I went Campbell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 3 I was between were obvious, right? Derrick Henry and Eddie George.
Really?
With Campbell. Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was Earl Campbell, Derrick Henry, Chris Johnson.
Chris Johnson was number 4 to me. Eddie George, because of longevity, man. He was there a long time.
Yeah.
He was Chris Johnson had, to me, 2-3 years where he was
scared
for
4 years.
But that was it, though. That's my thing. Eddie George was just a solid 1,000 to 1,200 yards for 10 years.
Yeah.
But I did go
like
with
7-8. But I get
a long time where he was a good running. Like, you knew running back were solid.
Yeah, you knew what you were going to get out of him.
Chris Johnson, you were also worried about the injuries.
Yeah.
Right? But you were like, okay, home run, boom or bust type of running back, obviously, with his speed. But I did go with Campbell over Henry. I think if Derrick Henry was not a free agent and stayed in Tennessee for a couple more years, I think it would be Derrick Henry. Because he's already got like 90 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that will not go away from him.
Yes.
His carries are going to start to decline.
Yes.
His yards are going to start to decline. That explosiveness is already declining.
Yes.
But you get the ball at the 2-yard line, you're going to tell me you're not going to hand the ball to a guy that's 6'3", 250 pounds? Give me a break.
He's a defensive end.
At least.
Yeah.
Might be a D tackle. Tight end with Wycheck.
Yeah.
I knew Givens off the top.
Okay.
And the second wide receiver I had to look up. I picked Charlie Hennigle. But I mean I'll go to you on this one.
So
with that. Because I was like, man, Tennessee, I was like, man, none of these I'm trying to even think of recent Tennessee receivers. And I'm like, I can't think of anybody that's been there for 4 years. Yeah. Let alone actually was good for 4. Like A.J. Brown, if they would never got rid of him, would be on this list.
He would have been on
right now. In the last 2 years, he had been on the Titans.
Yes.
He'd be on the list. He'd already have like 6,000, 7,000 yards. Yeah. But he's not there.
Nope.
So couldn't go with him. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine switching that one over.
So now I believe I went first on that one, right?
Yeah. So
this will be an interesting one.
The
AFC East. So
now
we're going with
the Bills. Okay. So the Bills, I think the quarterback, the running back, and the first wide receiver, I think, are slam dunk no-brainers.
Okay.
Jim Kelly.
Yes.
O.J. Simpson. And Andre Reed. I think those are 3 no-brainers. The second wide receiver, I went with Eric Moulds. I think if Stephon Diggs stays, I think he's gonna get into that spot. I think needs another year or 2, and I think he takes it. I think the years he's had are better. It's just, again, the longevity part. I don't think he's been there long enough. where Moles was there for a big part of his career. Tight end, I had to look it up. I had to look up his name.
Yeah.
The tight end for Jim Kelly.
Okay.
Pete, I'm gonna butcher his name. Pete Metzelaars.
Yeah. Yeah.
As the tight end.
Okay.
So that's who I went with. I know you have Kelly, OJ, and Andre Reed.
So this is the thing.
Thurman Thomas was a close to OJ, but OJ was special.
Yes. And
Thurman Thomas was ahead of his time. I think if Thurman Thomas played now, you'd be talking about the #1 fantasy football draft pick.
I'm very impressed that you picked Pete Metzelaars because I picked him too.
Okay.
I
remember. I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah.
I wasn't alive then. I was born in '89. But I couldn't remember his name. But I was like, man, I've seen the clips.
Yeah.
Seeing the highlights.
He was a unit.
The tight end.
Yeah.
And he moved people off the ball
6'6",
too.
6'7".
Yeah, he was a blocker too.
Yes,
in
yes.
that offense with.
So I thought,
running
okay,
in there too.
we have the same
5.
and this is the thing.
Okay.
Is our reasons for Mole between Diggs, literally you explained just the way I did, because I think Diggs is more talented.
Yeah. I think his career at this point has been better. It's just half of it was in Minnesota.
Was with Minnesota.
Yeah.
So, and I also look at, how I feel about Josh Allen. Like, I used to think Josh Allen was incredibly
and I agree. I think Josh Allen will eventually replace Jim Kelly. But I think, because it's a quarterback, he at least has to appear in a Super Bowl. If he never does, if he never does, I don't care what all the other numbers say.
Yes.
I don't care if he wins MVPs. He won't.
I agree.
He won't take that spot.
So, of course, I had Kelly. Of course, I had Reed. I had Molds, Eric Mold above Diggs, but Diggs was in consideration. I had Pete Metzelaars. There was no other tight end I had in consideration. I had OJ, but I just want to talk about Thurman Thomas for a minute.
Thurman Thomas was special.
So, I was a huge...
Side stat real quick.
Yes.
Thurman Thomas is one of 2 players in NFL history to rush for a touchdown in 4 Super Bowls. Name the other. Guarantee you won't get it.
4 Super Bowls?
If you don't know who it is, you're not going to get it.
4 Super Bowls?
Yes. If you don't know, you're not going to get it.
I would say... Well, see, now I'm thinking who's played in a lot of Super Bowls, so...
If you don't know, you're not going to get it. I'm telling you right now. Who? John Elway.
Okay.
Can you believe that?
So
quarterback.
But I'm gonna tell you what's funny is I started thinking to myself, okay, it's got to be a quarterback. Then I was like, is it Tom Brady?
Because you could have picked Franco from the Steelers. They won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years.
Super Bowls, yeah.
But
that team was so spread out.
Yeah.
I just didn't see him scoring in 4 different games, and I started thinking to myself, like, okay, it's got to be a quarterback. So I wouldn't have got that, but because I want to talk about Thurman Thomas, and this is my controversial take, right? I think that when I look at 90s football, like 90s football is real special to me because that's when I was like in junior high and in high school and actually thought that I had a chance to go into the NFL, right? So the 90s was really special to me. And I've said this on more than one occasion. I think you can make a strong argument that Thurman Thomas was the best running back of the 90s. And I understand that you have Barry Sanders. I understand you have Emmitt Smith. I'm not saying he was. What I'm saying is I truly believe you can make an argument for it. You're absolutely right. Thurman Thomas was ahead of his time. Thurman Thomas was an amazing receiver.
Yeah.
Thurman Thomas now would be Christian McCaffrey, and I love Christian McCaffrey. He would be Christian McCaffrey on steroids. He was amazing. So OJ was
special.
OJ was
special.
And it's so funny.
2,000 yards in 14 games.
And
they knew they were gonna. It's blizzards up there, bro. You know they're gonna run the football.
Was
back then.
amazing.
Yeah.
And in the history books, he is what he is because of what happened.
Yeah.
And we don't need to get into all that. But it was OJ was gonna be the slam dunk. But I just wanted to just talk about Thurman Thomas. I love Thurman Thomas. Yeah. So
we can go to Miami.
Yes.
So we agreed. So you had both too. So that was an easy one.
Sweet.
Yeah. So Miami was an interesting one for me too.
Now before you get started, Miami was interesting to me because
I think the only one that I think a quarterback and one of the wide receivers, I think, are absolute no-brainers.
Yes.
Can't pick anyone else.
Now, but see, for me, we're going to have to discuss this if we don't. we're gonna have to discuss direct positions, right? So, and you'll see what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Okay, so
I know what you mean.
So go with
go
yours.
ahead. No,
you want me to go first? Okay.
You go first.
So quarterback is Dan Marino.
Obviously.
Duh. Running back. So I said Zonka or Ricky Williams. Now, if you know your history, Zonka was technically a fullback. Technically, the tailback on that team was Mercury Morris. So if we want to be exact and say he was a fullback, then we can go with Ricky Williams.
No, I think a fullback is still a running back.
Okay.
In my opinion, they're in the offensive backfield, not a quarterback.
Yeah.
So I want Zonka.
Okay, so then we'll go with Zonka. Now, receivers, and I have another like iffy position where I need to see if we are okay with this.
I was between three guys.
Receivers, Mark Clayton.
I have Clayton.
And then, look, I get it, it's only been 2 years. Tyreek Hill, I'm cool with that because they've been 2 historic years. Now the tight end, this is where it gets a little tricky.
Bro, I had to look up tight ends.
But this is where it gets tricky. Keith Byars was a fullback / H-back for the Dolphins.
Okay.
Are you cool with us considering him a tight end?
We can. I didn't consider him.
Okay, so then I say Keith Byars.
Okay.
Who was amazing.
Yeah.
Keith Byars. So, but I'm gonna tell you what's funny about that. So you were aware of Keith Byars, right?
Yeah, I didn't consider him for tight end.
But I'll tell you what's amazing about Keith Byars is I always knew him as the NFL player, right? And he was an amazing running back out of the backfield. Later on, he was a tailback, fullback, and H-back. You know, have him go in motion, things like that. He was a short yardage back, but he wasn't going to be a guy who carried the ball 20 times a game. Keith Byars in college was a beast. And apparently, and I didn't know this, apparently he tore his knee up and had to kind of readjust his game.
Gotcha.
But at Ohio State, he was a 1,700-yard, 20-touchdown a year guy.
Wow.
So that was a bit interesting. But now let's hear what you got.
We'll go with him. So I had Marino, Zonka, and Clayton.
Yeah.
I didn't really consider Tyreek because it's been 2 years. I think he's going to be there.
Yeah.
I had him on the. He'll be there. We do this again, and if he has 2 more years like he's had, in 2 more years he'll be there.
Yeah.
So I was between Duper and Moore, Nat Moore, and I went with Nat Moore.
Okay.
So I wanted to switch up a little bit because Clayton and Duper. I think Clayton was better than Duper, and they played together. So I was like, I don't want to take him, so I went with Nat Moore.
Yeah. Now I'll say for the sake of my third receiver was Paul Warfield.
Okay.
So Paul Warfield was number 42, which was weird to see a receiver.
Yeah.
But he was amazing in I believe the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, late 60s.
But I just.
Yeah, Nat Moore was that receiver with Zonka.
Yeah. So this was the time where I said, okay, I'm cool with picking somebody who's only been there for a little bit.
Their receivers, I mean, they're kind of the same thing. They've had a lot of receivers that are kind of. You can pick
OJ
one.
McDuffie.
You can pick one. There's 7-8 guys that are all in the same.
Irving Fryer was
it's
good
really
there for a good
who
amount
you
of time.
want.
Now, but who'd you have for tight end?
I had Bruce Hardy, but we go with Byers.
Okay.
I really was like, man, I can't think of one either. So I had to look up tight ends and be like, who's tight end, what times and stuff like that. But I'm cool with Byers. I didn't consider him.
I was going to get real trippy with you, and they used to have a guy. And I remember him. I was just a big fan of his because I like guys who can play multiple positions. Like if you want me to be a fan, be a guy who plays running back, fullback, receiver, tight end, and like safety or linebacker or something like that. They had a guy. His name was Jim Jensen. He was number 11. So he was number 11 because I believe when he came to the league, I think he was like a third string quarterback. Mm-hmm. He was a tight end for them. He played during the Dan Marino time. He had the neck roll. It was number 11. So it was like, as a kid, it's like, this dude's got the neck roll. He wears number 11 at tight end. That's crazy. They would put him sometimes on like short yards. They put him at like quarterback. Sometimes he played fullback. I was going to pick him just to kind of be trippy about it. But then I remember Keith Byars and how great he was. And I wanted, as long as you were cool with that.
I'm cool with it. I
okay,
just didn't have him considered for that.
So
what are we doing about wide receiver 2? I'll be honest. I think it's going to be Tyreek Hill. I mean, and you're right. The 2 years he's had have been historically good. I mean, he has over 3,500 yards, or not over, but close to, in the 2 years. Yeah. So I'm cool. I'm cool with Hill. 2 is like third all time in their passing yards, third or fourth. So that's crazy, man. Behind Marino, Greasy, and
yeah.
I think it's Tannehill. Believe it or not.
Tannehill is one of those guys who is.
I'm not saying he's.
No, but you know what?
But he just sticks around, man. He's not terrible. He's an average quarterback.
I would say he's a little bit above average.
Yeah, I mean he's passable.
Yeah.
So all right, so we're gonna go to the Jets. This was the New York Jets.
This was the toughest one.
I was like, they only have one guy that I was like, off the top of my head, I'm picking him, and that was Curtis Martin, a running back.
Bingo.
To me, that was a no-brainer. There's
nothing else to think about.
Game, set, match.
Yeah.
Quarterback, I went with Namath.
Uh-huh.
I really was like, I mean, they really.
But did you think about another quarterback? And if you did, I want to see if I picked Namath like 80%, but I had a 20% conversation with myself about another guy.
What era did he play in?
Well, okay, that's my turn.
I looked and I was like, man, I mean, the quarterbacks that I remember from the Jets, I'm like, none of them played long except Chad Pennington. And I was like, and Chad Pennington, no, I'm sorry.
He was a guy.
You know, he was okay.
He was a jag.
Yeah. Vinny Testaverde, talent-wise, but he just was all over the place.
I thought about
he would have been my other guy,
20%.
I went with Namath. Receivers, I knew Wesley Walker, and then I went with Dan Maynard.
There we go.
And then I went Don. I'm sorry. Then I went with Rich Castor at tight end.
So give me your receivers again.
Maynard and Walker, Wesley Walker.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I almost went with Wayne Corbett.
I wouldn't have been mad at that. I wouldn't have been mad at that.
Because I was sitting there and I'm trying to think, and I'm like, dude, I can't name guys that have been on the Jets for more than 5 years. I really can't. They cycle through guys like nobody's business. It's ridiculous. But yeah, Curtis Martin was the only guy that I was like, that's 100%. You know, Curtis Martin's first ballot Hall of Fame running back. I mean, that guy was something else.
So for me, the Jets were interesting.
Yeah, the Jets. That was probably the hardest team for me.
It really was because
out of the AFC teams, anyway.
They were the team that I was more willing to go with talent over production.
I can see that.
Let me tell you
because
why.
They didn't have the production.
Well, not just that, but what it
except for Curtis Martin, there was nobody that produced for this team.
He was crazy consistent
for their career.
You can argue that they are one of those weird teams. I'll tell you another team is like this. Not as much as the Jets, but the Jets and Bengals always seem to have a guy that didn't have complementary guys around them where you can say, that guy goes to another team, his career plays out way better, right? So for the Jets, I went with Namath.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had a small conversation with myself about Vinny T, but I knew I was going to pick Namath. I mean, you have to, right? So Curtis Martin, Don Maynard. I went with Keyshawn Johnson. Now I'm going to tell you why I went with Keyshawn Johnson.
Talent over production. Yeah.
And
I almost went with Keyshawn too, and then I looked and I was like, man, he only played 3 years on the Jets. 4 years on the Jets. That blew my mind.
He got traded to, I believe it was the Bucks.
It was Tampa Bay, wasn't it?
Because he went to the Bucks, then he went to the Cowboys, and then he went to, but Keyshawn Johnson was so talented.
Yeah.
And I just so now tight end for me, I was stuck between. There was a guy, he was a high first-round pick for the Jets, incredibly talented. And he's one of those guys I think just like Keyshawn Johnson, where if they get drafted by a different team, I think the initial part of their career plays out different. It was between a guy named, his name was Johnny Mitchell. He came out of Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken. Johnny Mitchell was crazy talented. He was fast. He was big. It was either him and a guy who, from a production standpoint, whose name isn't going to like really ring bells, but he was very productive. Dustin Keller.
Okay, I remember Dustin Keller.
And I had to, with this one, I kind of wanted to go more with production, so I just went with Dustin Keller.
I'm okay with Keller.
Yeah.
I don't think Keyshawn was there long enough, man. I see your point.
Yeah.
But Wesley Walker is, to Jets fans, Wesley Walker is like...
He's their go receiver. Actually Maynard probably.
Maynard. But Wesley Walker is
yeah.
They don't mention Keyshawn. And so that's why, that's part of the reason why I was like, I can't go Keyshawn. Because I agree with you. I think talent-wise, he's probably there. That's why I almost went with Wayne Corbett.
Yeah.
Because he was that, and Jets fans are that blue-collar type of fan base, right? And he had that kind of same mentality and everything, right? He's been his whole career there.
I'm cool with that.
But I'm cool with Keller, too.
Yeah,
I'm cool with going Dustin Keller. So,
but it tells you, because I'll tell you what's funny. When you look at the Jets' history, it's like, dude, did you guys have any offensive players?
other than Curtis Martin.
Yeah.
But they do for like a year or two, right? Brandon Marshall was there for a couple of years.
Or they get guys late in their career. They had
but Brandon Marshall was still,
yeah.
All right, Patriots. I think quarterback and tight end are absolute locks. Obviously,
so
we'll see about the other three positions. So go ahead.
Okay, so Brady.
Obviously.
Curtis Martin.
Okay, he was on my. I had three guys, and he was one of them.
But I'll say this, Curtis Martin. But I think there could be an argument made for. I'm willing to hear a small argument for Corey Dillon, but I think ultimately Curtis Martin was the best running back they've had.
Okay.
Randy Moss.
Okay.
And then tight end Gronk. Mm-hmm. Who I think is the greatest tight end of all time. Mm-hmm. But I did want to take this opportunity to talk about the 87 before Gronk, which was Ben Coates. Ben Coates is criminally underrated. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows Shannon Sharp from the 90s. Ben Coates was the second team all-decade tight end behind Shannon Sharp. Young people watching this, look up Ben Coates. He was amazing.
It's just that, but to your point, I mean,
Gronk is the greatest tight end of all time.
Gronk's the first ballot Hall of Famer. Whether you think he's the best or not, I mean.
Now, that second receiver. Yeah. So, again, this is the second time this has come up. Bay Area, I'm very loyal. Edelman is from the Bay Area. Don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
He actually went to senior ball with Jerry Rice's daughter.
Yeah.
But Edelman, as much as I would like to go with him, those Bay Areas, he never made a Pro Bowl. Mm-hmm. May have made one.
He probably was on one from
like
guys that
special
drop
teams
out.
or something like that. Whatever.
Guys that drop out and stuff. But there's only 4 receivers make a Pro Bowl.
Correct.
Think about
that. In the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I had to go with this, and I wanted. We're gonna kind of veer off for a second, but just bear with me. I had to go with Wes Welker.
Okay.
I'm a big Wes Welker fan. I'm going to say something that's probably controversial. I think Wes Welker's a Hall of Famer. I really do. Okay. And this is a conversation, and this is kind of I have this argument. Well, not argument. This debate with people because I'm a huge Wes Welker fan. I appreciate, and I think if people look at his numbers and the production, I always look at it this way. Obviously, the number one goal in football is to score touchdowns. But people forget the number 2 goal is to achieve first downs, right? You don't get touchdowns without first downs, right? Wes Welker was I know, right? Wes Welker was a first down. If it's 3rd and 6, if it's he's very consistent. And I used to always say this, and this is no disrespect to this particular player, but I used to always use comparison because they were from the same time era, like their prime years. I would rather have Wes Welker than Deshaun Jackson.
Okay.
Because I would rather have a guy who's going to have 10 for 135 than a guy who could potentially have
3 for 135,
4 for 112, right? Because that 10 for 135 was going to be more impactful, right? So mine was Brady, Martin, Moss, Welker, and Gronk.
Okay. So I went with Brady and Gronk. Mm-hmm. For the receivers, I had four guys, right?
Yeah.
So I had the 3 you've already mentioned.
Yes.
And I also had Stanley Morgan.
Okay. Good one.
So I actually went with Stanley Morgan because of career.
Okay.
As a Patriot.
Yeah.
So then it came between Edelman, Welker, and Moss, right? And I was like, well, Randy Moss is obviously the best of the 3.
Yeah.
But he didn't play there long. The years he had there were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Welker, same thing, man. He only was there for 4 years.
Yes.
You realize that?
Yes.
Edelman was there his whole career.
Yes.
Also, postseason, Edelman, huge Super Bowl MVP. Wide receivers winning Super Bowl MVP is rare.
It is.
It's rare. It's usually a quarterback. It's a quarterback or a running back.
Yeah.
Almost every time.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then there's been a handful of defensive players and a handful of wide receivers.
Yeah.
So I actually went with Edelman. Okay. I did. Not as a player. I'm taking Randy Moss all day.
Yeah.
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
I don't think Edelman's a Hall of Famer. I disagree with you about Welker. I see your point. I see your point.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
Hall of very good. Not Hall of Fame to me.
Okay.
Is Welker's overall career better than Edelman's? Probably.
Regular season is.
His individual seasons, were they better than the individual seasons of Edelman's? Yes, but as a collective, and I just went with Edelman. And then here's what the running back. So I was between three guys. I was between Curtis Martin, but then I looked and I was like, yeah, I don't think he played there long enough.
Okay.
Corey Dillon, same thing. You know, if I had to go between those two, I would have went with Curtis Martin. So I went with a guy who was a jack of all trades running back. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Kevin Falk.
Yeah.
I went with Kevin Falk. And I went with Kevin Falk because, again, long time there.
Yes.
He's top 10 in Patriots history in receptions, and receiving yards, and rushing yards, and touchdowns. So I went with Kevin Falk as my running back. Because
I'm not mad at that.
Again,
yeah.
Is Curtis Martin a better running back?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is Corey Dillon a better running back?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But Kevin Falk was that third down back.
Yeah.
Kevin Falk came in on third downs. He'd clutch plays, right? He'd get the tough yards.
Yeah.
You know, he'd catch the little passes. No, he'd pass block. Just all-around player. And so I went with Kevin Falk. So I did go the little different route than you did. I think Stanley Morgan's one of the top two. I'm surprised you didn't mention him. You're talking about me being young and have recency bias.
Stanley Morgan
and you named all three that played from 2007 later.
Stanley Morgan was a baller. So Kevin Falk, I actually like that you brought him up. I do. I thought about him. I've been a Kevin Falk fan since he was at LSU.
Yeah.
I remember he was number 3 at LSU, and he had shaved in his head, all eyes on 3. I thought that was dope, right?
Yeah.
Tupac, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, but when I thought about Kevin Falk, I'll tell you somebody who made me kind of offset and not be. To me, I was like, well, if I'm going to choose Kevin Falk, why wouldn't I say James White? James White is
length of career to me with the team.
James White played for the Patriots for a long time.
Not as long as Kevin Falk. And Kevin Falk won 3 titles.
He won 3 titles. I think James White won 2.
Won 2.
Never fumbled. I love that stat. You can make the argument, and I think he was a Super Bowl MVP against that comeback against the Falcons.
He should have.
He should have won Super. He should have won Super Bowl MVP.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Because there were so many plays, right? That catch by Edelman.
Yeah.
Right? Was probably the play of the game.
Yeah.
Considering the magnitude of the play and then how did he catch the ball.
Yes.
It takes a quarterback to bring you back from 25 down. But James White did get the touchdowns, and then obviously the touchdown.
I want to say he had 10 catches.
He set the record. He broke Demaryius Thomas's record for catches. I think he had 14 catches.
That's right.
Demaryius Thomas got 13 in their loss.
He balled out.
He had 14 catches, including the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
The thing is, Tom Brady threw it. And Tom Brady threw the other ones. Yeah. And Tom Brady threw the other passes to get them in that situation.
And he's Tom Brady.
He's Tom Brady. But quarterbacks are always going to have the leg up, right?
Course,
so unless Tom Brady, if in that first half of that game Tom Brady had thrown 2 or 3 interceptions, it's a different story.
Yeah.
He didn't. They just were punting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so New England, the only 2 we agree on is Gronk and Brady. Yeah. So we had 2 different receivers and a different running back.
I'm willing to give in to Kevin Falk because I think he did so many things good. He was a great pass blocker, great receiver.
And they don't have a running back that has
the long career.
Yeah,
I'm willing to give that.
Okay.
Well, come on. How can we leave?
I'll take Moss over Edelman, but I think Stanley Morgan deserves to be on there, man.
I'm even willing to, as much as I love Wes Welker's game, I'm willing to give in to Morgan too. Because Morgan was the number 1 receiver.
Yeah,
he was the number 1 receiver.
Welker played 4 years there.
So I'm willing, and Morgan produced on some not so good teams.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to give into that too. But Moss got to be on the team, man.
I'll take Moss. All right. So now we got to go to the AFC North.
Yes.
And the first thing we're gonna do is Baltimore.
Yes.
So this is an interesting one too. Because Baltimore's only been around about 25 years.
Correct.
I got Lamar Jackson over Joe Flacco.
Okay.
I won 2 MVPs.
Yes.
Now Joe Flacco has won a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
But come on, Lamar Jackson is as dynamic of a football player as there is.
Yes.
Running back on Jamal Lewis.
Yes.
Wide receivers, I went Derek Mason. I think he was the no-brainer. I think he had. And the second one, I was between some people. At first, I was thinking Anquan Bolden, and I looked and I said, he didn't really play in Baltimore that long. So I ended up going with Torrey Smith, actually.
Okay.
And then tight end, I was between two guys, Andrews and Heap, and I went Andrews because I think Andrews is a better tight end. And their numbers already are extremely similar. And Andrews has significantly less games, and obviously is still playing. And Andrews has a first-team All-Pro on his resume, just as many Pro Bowls as Heap. So I went with Andrews.
So I went with Lamar. Right. Went with Jamal Lewis. I think that was like that was the slam dunk.
I think Derek Mason was too, in my opinion.
That was second. That was second.
But Jamal Lewis absolutely.
Now,
2,000-yard season. Man.
I did go with Anquan Bolden.
Okay.
So I did go with Anquan Bolden. I understand he wasn't there as long as Torrey Smith.
I thought he was there a lot longer than. But he was there longer than I remember. But
he was their number one receiver.
I was thinking he was there for a lot longer than what he was. But I'm okay with going Bolden over.
He was their number one receiver on that Super Bowl team.
Yeah, but Derek Mason to me has to be.
Now I'm interested. Todd Heap was third on my list.
Really? Who was the other tight end?
So Shannon Sharp.
Not
a
production.
Not there long enough. Not there long enough. But the reason he was second to me was because he was that number one receiver. Like
on that awful offense.
And that was I mean that's the level of difficulty.
But when you have that defense. Yeah, but no, I see.
They don't win that Super Bowl without him making plays.
I think he only played 2 years on Baltimore.
About 2 or 3 years because they drafted Todd Heap.
Because he played 1 year after Elway retired on the Broncos.
Yes.
And then he was gone. He went to the Ravens, and they won in 2000. And that was when he was there 2000, 2001, I think, and then he went back to Denver, if I recall.
But ultimately he did. But ultimately I had to go Mark Andrews. I mean,
even the production that they had there, because Andrews, you argue Andrews has been the number one for Lamar.
Yes, he has. Yes.
Zay Flowers, I think, is taking that baton a little bit.
I think he could.
But in their offense, with the way that they run the football, the tight end is always going to be a focal point.
Yeah.
Because when you run the ball, the tight end is who gets open.
Oh yeah.
Right over the middle.
You know what? I tell you, he does not even belong in this conversation. But I like Isaiah Likely. I hope they run a lot of double tight end this year.
I think they will. The rumors are going around that they're going to go after Derrick Henry. I think he's a great fit for that team because that short yardage.
Oh my goodness!
If he's willing to take why wouldn't he? I mean, he made money already on his second contract. If he really is like, I want to win, and is still going to preserve his career but still put up numbers, Baltimore is a destination that he should be calling them and saying, hey, I'm willing to play for X.
If I'm him, there's 2 teams I'm looking at. Baltimore's one.
Don't say San Francisco. Oh, it's like San Francisco.
No, we don't need.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that type of running game is not suited for Derrick.
It's not suited for him. No.
Buffalo. He'd be great. He'd be a great compliment to James Cook. Absolutely.
Can you imagine
that backfield?
Yes.
That backfield would be unreal because now those runs that you're using Josh Allen for, you're protecting his body by handing it.
Well, this is what I thought about. Imagine being a linebacker.
James Cook is so quick, and he was underrated coming out of college, in my opinion, as a runner because Georgia
they had him,
spread the ball.
White, they
spread the ball around, but he is a running back. His vision and everything is very, very underrated.
Can you imagine being? Let's say they signed Derrick Henry. Can you imagine being a linebacker in the playoffs and it's cold and it's in Buffalo?
You get Derrick Henry and Josh Allen.
You got to tackle them all day.
Yeah,
that is a long day.
All right, so Cleveland. This was interesting.
So
this was pulling out a bag, dude.
No.
This was going in a bag.
This was OG.
I don't think I had anyone that played beyond. I have to see when he retired, but I think he retired in '84.
I had one player from the '90s, and I can't figure out if it's because I just really like this guy.
Probably. We'll see.
Hear me out on it. So
okay. So I think the quarterback and the running back and the tight end, I would hope.
Oh yeah.
There's only 2 quarterbacks you can even choose from.
Otto Graham.
Yes.
Jim Brown.
Yes.
Who you can argue is the best football player of all time.
And then the tight end.
Ozzie Newsome.
Yeah. Okay.
Paul Warfield.
Okay.
Now the second wide receiver.
I had to look for wide receivers, bro.
There was a wide receiver in the '90s. I want to say he was about somewhere between 6'5" and 6'6". War number 1. Great deep threat. Like, he was huge. Michael Jackson. If you don't know him, look him up.
Don't remember.
Look him up.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. With Cleveland, so I had Otto Graham. The only other quarterback that you could even make make a conversation about his Kosar.
That's it.
But
That's it.
Otto Graham, especially when you consider how good the Browns were at that time.
Yes.
And
they were the standard.
Yeah, he was the one of the best players in the league at the time. Jim, to your point, Jim Brown's in the argument for greatest football player of all time. And Ozzie Newsome is one of the best tight ends ever.
Yes.
My receivers, I'm not going to lie to you, I had to look up wide receivers in Cleveland because I was like, dude, now I do think Amari Cooper's going to be on this list if he stays.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because he is producing.
Yes.
And I think if he has another 2 years like he had this last year, he's already going to be top 3 all time in Browns receiving yards. Are you kidding me?
He's amazing.
It's insane.
He's amazing.
But I picked Gary Collins and Reggie Rucker. I had to look in my bag, man. I know guys from the 60s and 70s. But I'll be honest.
Paul Warfield?
I didn't have Warfield on. I had
Paul
Warfield was one of my.
He was because he was a Brown before a Dolphin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was the marquee receiver.
I mean, the one guy who would have been on here, Josh Gordon, man.
I know.
I wanted so bad to put him on there, and I was like, I can't. He had 1 year.
Yeah.
He had 1 year. Unfortunately, he had all those other problems, but talent-wise, he's probably the best.
I'll tell you another guy who we could have, if depending on how you.
Braylon.
Well, so depending on how you describe his position, Eric Metcalf.
That's true. I didn't even think about Metcalf because he was on the Chargers a lot too.
So he was a Brown for a very long time.
Yeah.
He was a Falcon. People don't remember that, but I think he had about 100 catches.
Yeah, but that's like picking Josh Cribbs, right? Josh Cribbs is every year he was your Pro Bowl returner.
Yeah.
But he's not really doing anything in the receiving.
Well,
Metcalf did more receiving than Josh Cribbs.
No, he was Eric Metcalf.
But,
and we're going to have this conversation. Eric Metcalf is first team. If the dude played now, he'd be a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think they weren't creative enough in the 80s and 90s.
Well, no, it was a very slower. It was much slower running game. The passes were short, quick.
Yeah.
But not quick behind the line.
No.
Quick 5 yard passes.
Out,
So that's fine. I mean,
so,
Cleveland ain't making it past any round anyway.
What are we gonna do with this?
We can take the 2 receivers 2 pick. That's fine. I honestly, Cleveland.
I definitely say
Cleveland's
Paul
backfield is as good as anybody's.
Yeah.
And that's it.
How about we have?
You got no.
We go Paul Warfield, and then of your 2 receivers,
Collins.
which one? So We'll go with that.
We'll do that. All right. So then we got 2 more.
We're wrapping it up. So now we're going.
All right. So we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Pittsburgh was tough. So quarterback, you have 2 options.
Yes.
I went. This was so hard. I went with Terry Bradshaw over Ben Roethlisberger.
Okay.
And I will hear every argument for Ben Roethlisberger. I was torn, right? And part of it is different eras, so it's really hard to compare.
Yeah.
Neither one was ever really considered the best of their era. Neither one was really considered top 3, top 4 of their era. Both won. Mm-hmm. Both won because of defense. Although Ben's made bigger plays in the Super Bowl than Terry Bradshaw did.
Yes.
But I did go with Terry Bradshaw.
Okay.
Running back was also tough. There was between 2 guys, but I ended up going with Franco.
Okay.
Franco Harris over Jerome
Shout
Bettis.
out to the OGs for you. Okay.
I did go with him over Jerome Bettis.
Yeah.
That was tough, but I think Franco was more efficient than Jerome. Tight end, I'll go to tight end. Tight end was the one that was an absolute slam dunk.
I
For
think
me,
that
it
was
Heath
easy.
Miller.
Yeah.
100%. Wide receiver, there were 3 guys, right? To me, there's Hines Ward, AB, and Lynn Swan.
Agree.
Those are the 3.
Mm-hmm.
So now I had to look and say, who do I choose?
Yes.
Talent. Oh God, man, this was so hard. I almost Can we swap out one of these guys to be on the Jets? I mean, this was so difficult. I had to put AB.
Have to.
Because he led the league in receiving, 3 years, 4 years? It was either him or Julio for 6 or 8 years in a row. One of those 2 they were 1-2 every year.
He was on a historic pace. Yeah.
So then it's between Hines Ward and Lynn Swan. And it's like, dude, oh my gosh, you're killing me. And again, this is where eras make a big difference, right? Yeah. Hines Ward's numbers are better. Hines Ward was also arguably the best run blocking wide receiver in NFL history.
Yes.
I had to go with Hines Ward. I went Hines Ward with Lynn Swan, and it kills me, dude, because Lynn Swan deserves to be on this list because he is better than probably at least 5 of these receivers that we've listed, and he's not on the list. So I know, I obviously you have Miller with me, and then AB with me, and I think you have Franco too. You may have Jerome Bettis.
So I say this: I'm very proud of you on the receivers.
Yeah, it was tough, man. It was tough. It was tough.
Because AB, all the crazy stuff and everything like that, it cannot cloud what he accomplished.
Yeah,
he was so good.
He was the best. Him and Julio were the top 2 wide receivers for 6 years straight.
Yes.
You pick one. Who do you like better?
Amazing.
It's basically what you were picking.
And then for me, Hines Ward, I just like tough football players.
Yeah.
I like he's a football player that played receiver.
Yeah.
You know.
Shout out UGA, baby.
There we go. You know what's funny? I remember I was in maybe 8th, maybe 9th grade, and happened to be watching ESPN2, and it was the high school all-star game. It was Georgia versus Florida high school all-star game. And the option quarterback for Georgia was a All-American, high school All-American by the name of Hines Ward, who was going to the University of Georgia as a quarterback. And then they eventually, after his freshman year, switched him to wide receiver. But this is where we differ, good friend. You went the OG route, and I get that. Mm-hmm. Now, first, let me say, okay, Jerome Bettis, I gave him the nod just because. This is no shade against Franco Harris, but the big thing that was said about Franco Harris was that Franco Harris would run out of bounds to avoid the hit. Now, as a long-term thing, it's very smart. Very smart to do.
Back then. They were hitting a little different back then.
But to me, man, if you are a Pittsburgh Steelers running back, you're supposed to go heads up every play. Mm. And how do you not love a 250-pound running back?
250?
Man, he might have been more than that. I was being generous.
That man weighed 250 when he was freshman in high school.
I'm probably being generous, but he just, to me, he's like the epitome of the Steelers, right?
Yeah.
That's the epitome of the terrible talent. And now, the quarterbacks, I believe Big Ben, again, we've talked about this a few times. Let's leave some of the off-the-field stuff, although I will say I'm glad to hear that if I've watched interviews of Ben Roethlisberger. He's a born-again Christian. He's done a lot of good things in his life now, changed his life. But we want to leave the stuff that people will want to knock against him on the field, which did take place on the field. We want to leave that away.
Yeah.
I truly believe Big Ben is the most underrated quarterback in the last 30 years. Big Ben was
underrated.
Yes.
I don't know if he was underrated, man.
Because most people look at him and they look at the Steelers. And
he was a tough man, I'll tell you that. He was so hard to bring down.
He was amazing. He was amazing. He was on a good pace where it looked like he was going to win about 3-4 rings in his career. I think he ultimately ended up with two. Two, yeah. Lost one to Aaron Rodgers. But I really respect his game. I like a guy who, big, strong guy who could sit in there. He could, he had some wiggle when he was younger. He could run. He wasn't the fastest, but he was mobile. He was mobile. He
was still relatively mobile when he got older.
That's true too.
He could move in the pocket.
The last 2 seasons he was,
He had a shoulder problem.
But I truly believe he's the most underrated quarterback in the last 30 years.
I mean, I like I said, I was between them on everything.
Yeah.
I'll go with Big Ben over Bradshaw.
Yeah.
I don't think I can take Bettis over Harris though, man. I look at their numbers and look at the efficiency that they played with. Jerome Bettis averaged less than 4 yards a carry, man.
I'm willing to go with Franco because
Franco was a better receiver. Well, back then they didn't necessarily throw running backs like they not that they threw running backs a whole lot.
Yeah,
Bettis played, but Jerome Bettis, I don't even know if he could catch a football. They wouldn't even throw a top sweep to that.
He might get 9 to 12 catches here. I'm willing to go with Franco because we can't have this offense without one guy from those 70s teams.
Absolutely.
We just can't.
Absolutely.
So we got Big Ben, Franco Harris, AB and Hines Ward. Yeah, man, I'm proud of us, man. Agreeing on the receivers. Man.
Yeah, dude, Liz Swan getting left off was tough though, man.
Well, even John Stallworth, man.
Yeah, true. John Stallworth too.
So,
yeah,
but Heath Miller was like, I mean, that was.
Dude, he was Big Ben's favorite target, man.
And you know what's funny? If you ever see videos of Steelers teammates talk about Heath Miller, he was one of those guys that everybody on the team respected.
Yeah.
And in the way they talk about him is like, I like when you see those interviews and you see guys talk about the teammate that's like, you know he's good,
right,
but you hear them talk about him in the way that we talk about the superstars, right? And they just talk about him with such reverence. It's just like, man, he was the guy.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now
Cincinnati. Cincinnati was actually a tough one.
It was.
Man, it was really difficult. It was every position actually on here. Tight end I had to look up, man. Tight end I had no clue. But
tight end for me was pretty easy.
Quarterback, running back, and wide receiver was difficult.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie. Wide receiver, I was between a handful of people.
Yes.
Running back, I was between a couple of people. But it's you first.
Okay. So, now mind you, came between two guys. Okay. One guy I think is more talented.
Okay.
Another guy was more productive for the Bengals.
Okay.
And led them to more success.
Okay, so I know who you're going with.
I picked Boomer Esiason.
Yeah.
But Carson Palmer, I mean, man, you can make an argument Carson Palmer is one of the top 10, 5 most talented quarterbacks in the last 2 years.
In terms of just like arm talent?
Absolutely.
He's got a great arm.
I
agree.
And he's a great what if.
I don't think he play. Yeah.
If he never gets that knee injury.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think he played on the Bengals long enough. He probably had an overall better career.
He did, yardage-wise.
But I'm not even just yardage-wise. Just as a career, he probably had a better career
if I'm not
than
mistaken,
Boomer.
I think Boomer was MVP.
I have to look that up.
I know
he took him to the Super Bowl.
He led him to the Super Bowl.
Blown out.
But
that's when the AFC was losing every year.
And then, receivers.
Who's running back?
Oh, I'm sorry. Corey Dillon.
Yeah.
Okay, Corey Dillon. Wide receivers, Ocho Cinco. Other wide receiver is, and this is the thing about, you can make an argument this is guy just as good as Chad Johnson. AJ Green. AJ Green was amazing. Now, this might be controversial. I don't think either one of them are Hall of Famers. I think they're the Hall of Very Good.
I agree.
And then the tight end, Jermaine Gresham.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
While you're going, I want to look this up because I'm pretty sure Boomer won MVP.
So I actually we agreed on more than I thought. So I did have Corey Dillon at running back as well. That was probably the one I was most confident in. Receivers, I did go with Ocho and AJ Green. I did give Collinsworth a good look too. But at the end of the day, I did go with Ocho and AJ Green. I would actually argue that AJ Green is more talented than Ocho Cinco. Talk about a guy that just fell off a cliff though and didn't have a normal decline. That would be AJ Green. He went from 1,000 yards for like 8 straight years to just
injuries.
Now,
Boomer Esiason did win MVP in 1988.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So for Cincinnati, for quarterback, I didn't even consider Carson Palmer because I knew of how his career was. Yeah. He didn't play for any one team long enough as a quarterback for me, unless he would have played on the Jets. Didn't play quarterback on any one team long enough to be considered in that, right? He had a few good years in Arizona, a few years on the Raiders that weren't necessarily great, but I mean the number he produces because he's playing. So for me, it was between actually Ken Anderson and Boomer Esiason.
He was third for me,
and so I actually went with Ken Anderson, but the MVP might sway me on Boomer. I do think long term. Just like with T-Law, Joe Burrow's replacing these guys.
Oh, yeah. Joe Shiesty's going to be...
By the time this contract that he's on, that starts this year, is up, he's the Cincinnati quarterback. He's already led them. He's already had as much team success as Boomer has.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm willing to change Ken Anderson to Boomer.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That because, Joe Shiesty's it. Look, I'm a big
Joe
Burrow
Burrow
fan.
Joe Burrow is. He is. You're talking
side
about
note, where does he rank now? Where does he rank now as far as quarterbacks?
Well, okay. I mean, Mahomes is number 1
by far.
dude, man, the thing is his health, man, and that's what kills you.
Yeah.
But when he's healthy, honestly, I think I take him over Allen. I do. I think he's a better quarterback. Josh Allen is physically more gifted.
Yes.
But I think decision making, Joe Burrow trumps him, and that's where I think I would rather have, if I'm in the playoffs in a heated situation.
Yeah.
I'm taking Joe Burrow over Josh Allen.
That's a good point.
And that's where I'm going to take him, right? I mean, obviously, there is no. It's the number one's out of the question, right? So we're ranking quarterbacks 2 to 32.
Yes.
Right. I also do think a guy that's going to be there very shortly is C.J. Stroud.
I do.
C.J. Stroud is, and here I hate Ohio State with a passion. I can't stand that school. I can't stand that school. And all these quarterbacks that come out of Ohio State, they always are. I don't want to say they suck. You make the NFL. You're a good player.
Yeah.
But they never live up to what is expected. Quarterbacks from Ohio State. C.J. Stroud is different. C.J. Stroud, Carolina's sitting there shooting themselves in the foot right now.
You know the story behind it.
And they did all that trading, and they don't have a first-round pick this year to help. And to me, this is a side note, but to trade up to draft a quarterback to then plug him in is never, to me, like that. When you trade that much capital to move up, is never good because you can't build around them. Yes. And you're setting them up to fail.
Yes.
Sam Darnold, I think, would have been a good quarterback in the NFL if in the right situation.
I agree.
Zach Wilson has great talent.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, his intangibles are not very good, and that was not scouted. No. Okay? No. Sam Darnold, you're not hearing the same things about Sam Darnold.
No.
But watch him on the Jets. The man has no chance. He has no one to throw the ball to, no one that gets separation, and no protection.
Yeah. And bad coaching.
And that's demoralizing. And he was young.
Yeah.
He was young.
Yeah.
So he his freshman year of college, he was 17.
Yeah.
He was like 20 when he got drafted. Yeah. That is young.
He was young.
And he's still only like 24 years old.
Yeah.
But that confidence is gone.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a side note. But Joe Burrow, I would put probably as number 2. It's between him and Josh Allen.
Josh Allen is just like he's just like jump on my back. Jump on my back.
But he can't. Yeah, you jump on his back to lose. At the end of the day, and that's what to me. Burrow has played better in post. Now I'm not blaming this last loss on Josh Allen.
No.
That was coaching, in my opinion. Yeah. Honestly, what I think the Bills need to do. Yeah. They're going to run it back one more time. They had to. They had to. Allen's extension goes into effect, right? Yeah. What the Bills need to do, you have one more shot this year. Mm-hmm. If you don't make it to the Super Bowl, I think you got to fire your coach and got to move on. And it's not firing the coach because he's not a good coach. Yeah. This team, I think, as presently constructed, has gone as far as it's gone.
I agree.
So you either have to dismantle the team around Josh Allen, and Stephon Diggs is on the wrong side of 30 now as a wide receiver.
Yes.
So his production is going to start declining.
I would trade him right now.
Right. If you do that, if you fire your coach, you do that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to stick with McDermott, you're going to run it back. You're going to keep Diggs there for another year.
Yeah.
But if they don't get it done, you got to fire the coach. You got to get a new voice in there.
Yeah.
But I think that they should have won that game, and they played for the tie instead of playing for the win.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times you watch that over and over and over again. Mm. Why? Yeah. And in those conditions, to put a kick, this
is the one thing I think we both agree on.
It blows my mind.
Is that Mahomes, by far number one, but we agree that Mahomes, Burrow, and Allen are the top 3 quarterbacks.
I think so too.
They're the top 3.
And it's it's
semantics. Who you want to put
and it's no offense to Lamar Jackson. I think he's a very good quarterback.
Correct.
He's on a trajectory to the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
He is the most exciting overall quarterback probably to watch because of what he can do. I think so too, but I'm not going to take away from what Lamar's growth has been phenomenal.
No, I agree. I love Lamar,
and I just.
But Stroud is like,
and I give a ton of credit to John Harbaugh.
Yes.
Talk about a coach that fits systems to players. Yes. How many times do you see coaches, especially at that level?
It's one of our
biggest pet peeves. It's not like college, because in college you can say, I recruit to my system.
It's one of my biggest pet peeves in professional sports.
Why'd you draft a guy if he doesn't fit your system? Then don't draft him.
You watch a guy, and this happened a lot. You know, like as we're talking, this happened a lot in the '90s. You watch a guy run all over the field in college, and then you draft him and say, "Hey, this is how we do it here."
Yeah.
That never, as a kid, that never made sense to me, let alone an adult. Yeah. So I love the fact that he said, "Okay, let's adapt our system to him, as opposed to trying to make him adapt to the system we already have."
Yeah.
Now we got way off topic on that one, right?
Yeah.
Now,
so I mean, I'm willing to switch to Boomer and then Gresham. Yeah.
And
so
receivers we agree with.
Yeah. Ocho, AJ, and then Corey Dillon.
So that ends the AFC way of things, right?
Yeah.
So you know, next time you'll join us, we'll be talking about the NFC. As we talked about, you know, once we do the NFC side, then we'll talk about who would win these divisions. We'll break it down from divisions all the way to conference finals, all the way down to see who wins this championship scenario that we have created of the best individual quarterback, running back, wide receivers, and tight ends. We hope that you've enjoyed the conversation. We hope that you've enjoyed the time with us. Continue to join us. You know, continue to stick with us. It's not going to just be things like this. It's going to be a whole multitude of different, interesting sports topics. You know, one of the great things about being men is that we can just literally sit around and just start talking about. We can just start naming athletes and have a good time for 2 hours.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how this is going to go here. You're joining two bold and bald men, two family men here who love talking about sports. We want to be able to entertain you at the same time doing what we like to do amongst each other is talk about sports and engage each other. So thank you for joining us.